Welcome, everyone, to All My Best Friends Are Digital, your podcast about video games and the stories they tell. With me, as always, is Caitlin Bailey. How are you doing, Caitlin?
I am wonderful. How about you, Mark?
I think that wonderful, if anything, is an understatement. I am doing quite well, Caitlin. We're going to be talking about games this week. We're going to be talking about what we've been playing lately. We're going to be talking about our retro game, Parasite Eve, in gaming opinions on old school funware, because if Caitlin goes too long without discussing a Square property, she gets twitchy. We are then going to go on to discuss Jusant. That is how it is pronounced in French. In English, Caitlin, how would you say it?
Jusant?
In our feature game, thank you very much. And then we are going to be engaging in some shameless hyping of upcoming titles, aka Shout. Don't worry, we'll circle back to questions of pronunciation because this seems to be the indelible truth about podcasting. That is all that anyone wants to talk about. But before we do that, we're going to be talking about what we've been playing lately. Caitlin, what has been occupying you lately?
Okay, so I decided to try out a legit horse game. It's not the anime racing game.
Oh no!
It's not that. It is called The Ranch of Rivershine. And it was in early access for, I don't know, probably a zillion years. But it came out in May, and I decided to try it out. So this week was a bit of a short week for us here at All My Best Friends Are Digital. So I didn't have a ton of time to play, and I don't think I've quite played for long enough to develop a full opinion. At this point, I'm still trying to figure out, like, where is my horse game niche, Mark? I don't know. As I've mentioned before, like there's a bunch of games that are kind of horse adjacent that I've played the crap out of. Like Breath of the Wild, Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2, even Assassin's Creed, Shadow of the Colossus. Like I play them like they are horse games, but I didn't know what a real quote unquote horse game would be like. And I don't know. I think from reading a little bit on Reddit about people like recommending horse games, I think people like to do the whole, like, taking care of your horse. Let's, pick out some tack and braid its mane and, muck out the stalls. And it's like, okay, I did that when I was a kid doing riding lessons and horseback riding camp and stuff. I don't need to muck out any stalls. Thank you. That's fine. I don't need to see horse poop.
The verb is literally muck. That doesn't sound great for anyone.
No. So I've been thinking a lot about, what is it that makes a horse game fun for me? And I think it's all in the traversal. Like in Assassin's Creed, I would opt to ride, like, and this is Assassin's Creed 1 here, but I would ride between areas because it was fun. I liked to steal a random horse, because I don't think you could actually have your own in Assassin's Creed. And I would just ride from point A to point B instead of doing the fast travel because I liked it. And I don't think it's quite what I want in Ranch of Rivershine. Early on, like, you can't move very fast or very long. In order to train your speed, you actually can't go the fastest speed because that trains endurance for your horse. So you have to canter, not gallop.
That is a word I've heard before.
Yes.
I know that it means fast, but not very fast.
Yes, exactly. I don't think I'm the target audience for all, like, the basics of horse care content.
Give me a for instance. Are you learning new things about horse physiology?
No, not so far. It's mostly like you go to your horse's profile screen, and it's like, okay, you can pick out exactly what kind of feed you want to give them. Do you want to give them hay? Do you want to give them oats? Which kind of hay do you want to give them? Okay, and we also can give them treats. You can give them apples or pears or carrots and it's like, whoa, that's all a lot.
That's too much? That's the line you don't want to cross? So you're not, like, trimming the vestigial toe at the back of their legs. I can't remember what that's called, but I do know that that's a thing you have to do with horses.
That does not appear to be featured in Ranch of Rivershine, although I feel very confident that there is a horse game out there that lets you do that, because that seems to be part of the thing. Yeah.
It's weird that Ranch of Rivershine is like, okay, we're going to acknowledge and we're going to have you interact with poop, but we're not going to acknowledge the, quite frankly, kind of bizarrely fascinating vestigial toe on the back of the leg.
Yeah.
What's that called again?
A chestnut.
Oh, it's called a horse chestnut. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, there is stuff that sounds fun that I haven't gotten to yet, like going out and finding a wild horse that you want to tame and then catching it. Like, cause that's something that I always enjoyed in Red Dead Redemption and in like Breath of the Wild. There's also breeding. You can train up your horses and then sell them at auction and buy other horses at auction. There's a lot of like quality of life stuff that Rivershine could really use. One example is like when you go to try on, like, so I bought a blanket, an orange blanket for my horse.
Yes.
I went to go put it on, and they show all of these options for what different kinds of blankets there are, but I don't actually have anything in most of the categories. So you go to it, and it's like, oh yeah, you don't have any of these colors. And it's like, well, thanks. Why'd you let me click on it then? But apparently there's only, it's all a single developer, and that's kind of cool. Like, so I think that the game Ranch of Rivershine is quite impressive considering that there's only one person working on it. But I would love to see some quality of life improvements. Yeah, I don't know. So we'll see. It's fine. I'm not obsessed with it. I was really hoping that I'd get obsessed with it, but that's okay.
It's weird. It could be that I'm just speculating. Correct me if I'm way off base here.
Yeah.
And it is early to tell. It could be that you don't actually want to play a horse game. You want to play other games with just enough horse content.
Yeah.
Maybe it is better to wish that there had been more horse instead of wishing that there had been more game.
Yeah.
Or not to say that there's not enough game. I don't want to get reductive about what constitutes a game. That's ridiculous. But more of the other non-horse elements that Ranch of Rivershine thus far has failed to provide you.
Yeah, I think if the side characters or the story were a bit more like the story is, this is apparently a town that is looking to be revitalized in the form of getting a new champion, and you are supposed to hopefully be that champion. And by champion they mean somebody who just wins races and stuff. And it's like, okay, that's cool, but like that's not the most interesting story, right?
Do you actually run races in the game, or is it something that happens off screen?
Yeah, so you can do races. The only one that I have unlocked so far is like a jumping course, and I ran it a few times and I got first place, and it was pretty easy to do so. That was just the beginner one.
Is there dressage?
I don't know, actually. I only know of the jumping course that I did. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
I'm not sure what else they have. But yeah, so that's the Ranch of Rivershine.
You said that you wish that the characters were more interesting. I mean, the characters are clearly meant to be the horses.
Yeah. In general, the art... So, okay, there's character portraits, which I think are absolutely lovely. They are beautiful, like, hand-drawn 2D portraits when people talk to you. The 3D art feels a bit, like, bland. A bit generic, I guess. The horses are cute, but the environments are fine, but they're not like, I don't know. They're not beautiful. They don't pull me in any way.
Oh, and the animation is all super stiff.
Yes, that's the other thing. Like, I mean, obviously, many of the other games that I mentioned earlier aren't, quote, legit horse games, but the horses look normal, like when you're sitting on them and riding them. Generally, the animations look really good. And yeah, stiff is a great word for it. There's definitely a lot of stiffness in the animations.
I'm getting the strong vibe, both from this trailer and from your description, that this is meant, in a non-trivial way, not exclusively, to appeal to the kind of instinct that a lot of people have with a lot of different things in games, which is, this is my collection of things, I've customized my things, I like to go look at my things. And those things could be anything.
Yeah.
They could be mechs, they could be automobiles, they could be outfits, they could be horses, whatever. I make no judgment as to what the content is.
Yeah.
And I've seen, like the Armored Core games, for example, you could spend hours customizing every little bit of paint and insignia and what have you.
Yep.
And when playing them, my initial reaction is, oh, cool. And then I spend 2 seconds interacting with it, and I'm done with this already.
Yeah.
This is not why I'm here.
Yep, for sure.
And are you discovering that this is true of you with horses as well? Like, you might care a little bit, but not as much as Rivershine might want you to?
I think so, yeah. And that said, looking at Reddit, looking at reviews, for a lot of people, this is exactly the kind of, like, Ranch of Rivershine is exactly the kind of game that they wanted, and they got it. And that's awesome. And I was just a little disappointed to learn that it's probably not the exact kind of game that I wanted.
The more niche you get, the more specific the taste, in my experience. And yeah, I guess it's good news, bad news. The bad news is maybe you don't really like the quote-unquote pure horse games.
Yeah.
But the good news is that means that you don't have to go down a huge rabbit hole of getting 70 versions of the same thing and obsessively building dozens and dozens of stables of your pretty ponies.
Yep. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe anime horse girl racing game is more my speed.
I'd be surprised. I've heard a number of people talk about, it's called Uma Musume.
Yeah.
And one of our mutual friends actually is playing it. I haven't talked to him about it yet. But I feel like this discussion of the Ranch of Rivershine has been a fascinating window into a tiny sub-niche of a sub-niche. Yeah. And I thank you, therefore, for being our horse game correspondent.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, what have you been playing lately, Mark?
I've been playing a bit of a blast from the past, in that this is a game we covered extensively a few months ago. This is Kunitsu-Gami, and I've been playing the expansion Otherworldly Ventures, because what I had failed to appreciate was that this turns Kunitsu-Gami into a roguelite structure. And I am all over that. So, the normal structure of Kunitsu-Gami, it turns out I really love hybrid games much of the time. It's this wonderful hybrid of real-time strategy and hack and slash. You spend the day cycle going and purifying villagers who pop out of this gross purple stuff, and then you can send them to work. And by work, I mean mostly combat. You tell them, you are an archer now. And they're like, I am an archer. And then they go be an archer. And then when the night phase comes, the monsters come, and the archer, does pew-pew, and your axe people go chop-chop, and your sumo wrestlers go doskoi, and the whole thing. And all of this is balanced with a sort of currency and so forth. Anyway, I loved Kunitsu-Gami. I raved about it when we reviewed it. It has remained prominent in my memory for being so different from a lot of the other offerings, coming out of nowhere. Again, showing that Capcom is willing to try weird stuff. And it came out with a free DLC. So Otherworldly Ventures is that free DLC. And what it does is it super condenses the day phase. You're not really trying to find new villagers anymore. You have the villagers you have. You're not spending as much time going and getting resources. You mostly have the resources you have, although there are some extra ones you can get. You do some of the things you do in the base game, like you can go and purify a couple of wild animals to pick up some rations and things of that nature, but the maps are smaller, and you're not wandering around as much. This is a good news, bad news situation in terms of the overall depth and breadth of Kunitsu-Gami. It's good in the sense that, you're trying to provide a quicker, more condensed version than the sometimes rather sprawling scenarios and levels in Kunitsu-Gami. And it is also the case that you don't have to engage in some of the things that I found, quite frankly, not particularly fun in Kunitsu-Gami. Like, I would just miss elements of the background. Like, that element of corruption is just window dressing, as opposed to that element of corruption was a villager you should have been purifying. You missed that. Oh well, sucks to be you. Mm-hmm. This didn't happen all the time, but it's a thing that happened. So, good news, bad news situation. You also lose, though, the overall rhythm of this day-night cycle. It was a very, very interesting rhythm because the night cycle is when the combat occurs. You get swarmed with monsters. Pretty much all you're doing is the hacking and the slashing and some emergency repositioning of dudes. Like, that gate isn't spewing at monsters anymore. This gate is. So get these axemen and these spearmen or whatever and move them over to a different section of the map. And here in Otherworldly Ventures, much of your time is going to be in the night phase, and much of your resources are going to come from the night phase as well. So you're not really exploring a level anymore. It's very much, here are your people, give them an assignment, there you go. All level ups, which were sort of strategic meta progression in the context of the campaign of Kunitsu-Gami, are now roguelike bennies. You finish a level, you're given an option of 5 benefits. One of them might be an extra villager. One of them might be a new profession for your villagers. You have to unlock all the professions past the starting 2-1, namely woodcutters who use axes in melee fighting, and archers who use bows and engage in ranged fighting. I have now explained to you what archers are.
Thank you.
Or it might level them all up, because one of the coolest upgrades in Kunitsu-Gami was leveling up your professions, and suddenly they become incredible badasses. And that, too, is an element of meta progression. Anyway, so all of this has been condensed. All of this has been really simplified so as to put more emphasis on the night phase. Now, this is great because if you finished the main game, replaying earlier levels is fine, but it's not really as good as this. And so it really does seem like the people behind Otherworldly Ventures were like, okay, we have a budget of 5 cents in a dream. We've been told by Capcom that we get to spend 2.5 days working on this thing. I'm exaggerating. I'm sure it was... everything in AAA game development costs $1 billion the moment you even think about it. But this is a low asset expansion for people who've already beat Kunitsu-Gami. Right? And these are the things that I never expect, and I'm always welcome to receive. The biggest example, I think, and we talk about this all the time, and anybody who's played it will never shut up about it because it was so exciting, were the free DLCs for the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer that were incredibly feature-rich, came out of nowhere, unasked for, unannounced, and cost nothing. And I feel like Otherworldly Ventures isn't as good as that, but it's still really cool. I'm very grateful for it. And so I've been playing a fair bit of it. Again, it doesn't have the full satisfaction of that excellent hybridization of the full rhythm of the day-night cycle of your campaign Kunitsu-Gami level, but it is a great way to dip back into it, especially a few months later. You know, one of the reasons why it took me a while to try Otherworldly Ventures was because, like, oh, well, it's like endgame content, you know, I don't really remember everything. There's a whole bunch of things you forget, like not just the control scheme necessarily, but some of the intricacies about this, that, and the other, about different units playing off each other and good formations and things of this sort. So this is perfect. You come back and all you've got are axes and bows, and you don't really need to remember much, and you're running around immediately, and it's got a quick, visceral nature to it. It's a perfect way to get back into it. So as somebody who was a massive fan of Kunitsu-Gami, I think Otherworldly Ventures is just a great gift from Capcom. And unfortunately, Kunitsu-Gami is going to be leaving Game Pass very soon. I don't know. I'm strangely tempted to now buy the thing. In part because the market is a participatory democracy, and I'm really enjoying Otherworldly Ventures because on top of just being able to get back to a game that I very much appreciated, I'm vaguely curious if they're going to be doing more expansions. I don't know. Like, how do you judge the success of a free DLC expansion for new endgame content? I'm not sure. But also because in a strangely satisfying element, the Otherworldly Ventures DLC gives you lots of cool cosmetic unlocks. So you can dress up your Dragonfly Warrior and give them new kinds of swords and stuff. And that's just another detail that I really like about Kunitsu-Gami. I'll put it to bed after this, because I could talk about Kunitsu-Gami for a long time, and I have.
Yeah.
But it's really cool that what happens is they summon the spiritual warrior from beyond the veil to come help them with this terrible infestation. And you basically get a dancer with a sword. And it's just this, I don't know if it's rooted in Japanese mythology. I don't know if it's a common motif or trope in a variety of Japanese stories, but it's a lovely subversion of what we're normally accustomed to. Like, you're expecting some massive, beefy something or other, and instead you get this graceful, androgynous dancer thing. And it's really cool. It's like, I am the Dragonfly Warrior, roar! It's like, not quite. It's more like, wee! No, but I'm exaggerating. So yeah. Is the name of the Dragonfly Warrior. So is obviously a badass. The way they move is not like, they move like a dancer, but like a dancer who's here to kill you. And so it's
yes.
just very satisfying. And it feeds into the visual uniqueness of Kunitsu-Gami. It is very much unlike everything else. Anyway, if you haven't tried Kunitsu-Gami, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. I don't like real-time strategy games. I thought I was going to dislike Kunitsu-Gami. But the hybridization is so successful. It's one of those hybridizations that really makes it more than the sum of its parts. You know, you take solid but uninspired hack and slash elements, solid but uninspired real-time strategy elements, a little bit of currency manipulation, and a little bit of an interesting building structure. You marry them together and you get something that's really gripping. And I think that this is how clever game design can really elevate some of these basic elements. And Otherworldly Ventures has given me exactly what I wanted, which was a new way to interact with them and an excuse to come back to a game that I finished and thoroughly loved. So that's been my experience with Kunitsu-Gami Otherworldly Ventures.
Is there a story with Otherworldly Ventures?
The story is there are bad people and they want to come get your fancy princess.
Okay, and you don't want them to get your fancy princess.
That is to say, there is no additional story to Otherworldly Adventures.
Okay, and then do they still have boss fights?
Yes, in that, no, they don't have the boss fights the same way they did in the campaign, but they do a very good job of, as the levels progress, punctuating it with those truly massive mobs that are basically mini bosses. But no, they don't have those huge set pieces. If anything, actually, that's a good analogy. I'd forgotten about the boss fights. The boss fights at Kunitsu-Gami I thought were really cool, but at the same time they really didn't lean into the strengths of the structural elements of the game, because it wasn't it didn't have the hybridization at all. There was no currency manipulation, there was no aspect of unlocking, there was no aspect of any. You had these people, it's like, that's it, these are the resources you have at the outset, nothing is going to change. And Otherworldly Ventures, although on a spectrum is probably closer to the way that the boss fights work, gives you enough of the base game manipulation and upgrades and evolving and investment elements and so forth that really reminds you of the qualities of the base game rather than feeling like you're getting half of the game stripped out.
Nice.
Kunitsu-Gami, Otherworldly Adventures. And now we're going to move on to gaming opinions on old school funware GOOF. We're going to be talking about Parasite Eve. This was released by Square in 1998, or shall we say peak Caitlin years. Final Fantasy VII was released in 1997, a year before. And a year before that was Resident Evil. And I say this because I think with some degree of accuracy, Parasite Eve has been described as some kind of weird hybrid of Final Fantasy and Resident Evil. And I said that sometimes I love hybrids. That sometimes is going to be doing some work here. Anyway, Caitlin, why don't you give us your impression about what's going on in Parasite Eve?
Okay, so Parasite Eve is the story of Aya. She is a rookie NYPD officer
who wants to go to the opera to show off her gown, which she totally has, being a rookie New York police officer.
Yes.
Anyway, setting that aside.
Yeah, so it starts with her going on a date with some rando, and they walk in, and, you know, you're watching the opera, and you're like, okay, I guess we're watching the opera now. And then this lady in, I think, a red dress starts singing, and all of a sudden, everybody in the room starts spontaneously combusting, which is bad.
Oh, thanks for the clarification.
Yeah. Aya hip checks her dude to be like, get out of here, don't be dumb, and he leaves, and so does everybody else, apparently. Oh, everybody who isn't burned to a crisp. And Aya goes chasing after singing opera lady. So, the writing is not particularly good.
Oh, that's being very kind.
The dialogue is funny, and I'm not sure it's supposed to be. My favorite. So I wasn't able to play for too long, partly because I played the first 45 minutes. I had missed save points up until then, and then I realized that the memory card that I had in my PlayStation was full.
Oh no. Common problem.
Yeah. I asked my husband if he would please swap the memory cards, and then when he went to do that, he somehow accidentally turned off the PlayStation. So I had to do the first 45 minutes and change again.
That, and you had to deal with your divorce.
We are still married. It's fine.
Wow. You are a very tolerant person.
But my favorite piece of dialogue was the villain, this lady says, like, the day for the mitochondria to be free has finally arrived. And then Aya says, mitochondria? What are you saying? I don't understand you. And that's not my emphasis. That's the emphasis that's in the dialogue. And
yep.
It's it's so weird. It's so weird.
So on top of that, this was reminding me about all the reasons why I spent 10 years not playing JRPGs, frankly.
Uh-huh.
Because there's this sort of standard, yes, the mainline dialogue is terrible. Everyone is out of central casting. Aya is this weird cipher who's just bizarrely pulled along through the events surrounding her. All the cops are like, somebody watched 15 minutes of a single episode of a cop drama and then kind of had to reconstruct everything from there. So It's super stilted, but at the same time super stereotypical. So it's not even as smooth and as unremarkable as like generic, bland procedural writing. It's really awkward procedural writing. The thing that I hate so much about the writing in a lot of JRPGs and JRPG adjacent games is this expectation that there's a whole bunch of people who are standing around, and what you have to do, sometimes you don't have to, and that's fine. I respect games that don't do this, but nonetheless, it's a thing that happens. You wander up to someone who's just standing around, you hit the interact button, and they just spontaneously divulge whatever happens to be passing through their head. It is not how humans act. It is the most obvious indication that you're in a game that I could imagine in the context of writing, other than the person literally turning to face the camera and saying, "Oh, you just pressed the X button while standing next to me," which they might as well be saying, frankly. Like I was in the police station. I was wandering around. I had just been issued my NYPD issued M16. And thanks to the permit that I was given a slip of paper by the chief. I went to the basement and they just handed over an M16 and they said, "Be careful with this, mind you." I'm like, okay. And so I'm wandering around a minute, and some dude out of context that I'd never spoken before starts complaining about his girlfriend. It's so strange. It was just a reminder of the era, just a very, very time capsule-y thing about extemporaneous non sequiturs offered by NPCs written badly.
Yeah. Also, like, after the initial dungeon is over and you walk out of the opera house and this reporter comes up to you and it's like, "You're the sole survivor." Not the sole survivor. There were many survivors. You're just the only person who was still in the building.
Right.
But they keep calling you sole survivor. I don't know why. And then your partner walks over and just socks him in the face. And I was just like, oh my God. Like, okay, as Commander Shepard, I did punch the reporter because they were being a jerk. But I won't defend it. But it was still like, oh my God. Like, this guy spoke to you for 3 seconds and your partner just comes over and socks him in the face.
Can I relate my favorite scene in Parasite Eve? It's near the beginning. I didn't play very much of Parasite Eve. The chief tells you, "All right, Aya, you were at the scene. We're going to go to a press conference now. You told me that the entire crowd was set on fire by some creepy alien lady talking about mitochondria she transformed into a Final Fantasy mid-boss and then led you through a merry chase. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to underplay that element of the story, and we're just going to talk about how the investigation is ongoing, and you're there for window dressing because you were there and the media is curious about you, but let me do the talking, please." And she's like, "Got it, chief." And then you go and, like, obviously, like, I'm exaggerating the extent to which the chief was being polite. The chief was being a bit abrasive. But frankly, the chief's your boss, whatever. And of course he's fat, so we're not supposed to take him seriously anyway because fat bias is endemic in video games as it is in any other media. And so you go to the press conference and the reporter is like, "So what happened there?" And the chief is like, "Well, we think..." And then I interrupt him and say, "It was a creepy alien lady. She set them all on fire with the powers of her mind and its mitochondria." And the chief is like, "Oh, what am I going to do with this person?" And it's, honestly, as the user, I'm supposed to be sympathetic with Aya. There are ways to write this scene, right? There are ways where like, a reporter has a source. They have to think about mitochondria. They even use Aya's previous statements. They're like, were you lying then or are you lying now? There's a brief moment of silence. Aya looks left, looks right, decides to tell the truth in a slightly diplomatic way, and then there's a huge blow-up. That's the way it's supposed to be written. Yeah. Not the chief is in the process of giving banal platitudes, is interrupted by a subordinate in front of the media, yammering on in ways that would get her literally committed.
Yeah.
Parenthetically, she's carrying an M16 at the time. So, like, it's impossible to take any of this seriously.
Yeah, it was a lot. Also, when you run into your partner's kid who just shows up at the station, and it's like, "By the way, this is the absent father trope." Like, it's like, "Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and then you have to go rescue him from the opera concert that he decided to get a ticket to in Central Park. And Anyway. An additional way in which Parasite Eve is a super time capsule is some graphics of this era have aged well.
Yes.
And then there's Parasite Eve. The polygonal models, I think, look pretty bad.
Yeah.
Like, Aya's proportions in particular, she doesn't look human. Her torso's too squat. She's got the sort of Aerith hair. It's a whole thing. Actually, honestly, the rotund males, like your partner and the chief, they actually look the most human of all the characters, frankly. And then you've got the pre-rendered backgrounds,
Yep.
which you're occasionally expected to interact with.
But you can't
and like a
tell.
door will open or something. Yeah. Oh, I do not miss that period of game design where you would be wandering around very slowly because Aya's run is a stately jog at best.
Yes.
Mashing on the interact button. And
Yep.
sometimes even when you know that there's a thing you can interact with, you're not standing in quite the right place.
Yep. Yeah, like my second time through the very beginning in the opera house, I knew that I could open every locker. So I run up to the locker and I hit the button and nothing happens. And then I, kind of shimmy a little to the side, hit the button, nothing happens. I'm like, come on, just open the damn door. I also found a chest completely by accident, which was obscured in darkness. Like there's just
sometimes
who expected you to see that?
Caitlin, are you now objecting to the idea that Square and Square Enix games expected you to just hit X at random things and sometimes get like an extra potion or something? It's core to their game design.
Yeah, it was a lot. Every now and then you could tell what was interactable because like when you go into, I don't know why Aya is allowed to go into the dressing room where all the male cops are getting changed, but she is. And there's lockers, and I could see that some of the lockers were a shade lighter than all of the other lockers. And those were the interactable lockers. So it's like, oh man, I don't miss this at all.
The late 90s were a savage and difficult time in game development, Caitlin.
Yes, they sure were.
It was a rough life.
Also, there's no idle animations at all. And that was so weird. That was so weird. Like, I legitimately thought that my PlayStation froze a couple of times because just nothing is happening on the screen at all. Like, I just forgot that's what things were like. There were no idle animations, no blinking, no slight shifting of body weight. It's just frozen.
Did you play Parasite Eve when it was released?
So I had started it. I distinctly remember at least getting to the point where I could see the gross rat transformation. But I don't know that I got too much past the beginning, like when you return to your station.
I have to give credit where credit is due. Part of the reason why there was so much excitement about Parasite Eve when it was released was because it was Square doing a contemporary setting with a kind of a horror theme, which is not something they'd done before, or at least not something they'd done recently. I can't speak to any number of obscure RPGs they released in the mid-90s that were only on the Super Famicom and never made it stateside. I'm very sorry. I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of these things. But at the time, games of contemporary setting, attempting or gesturing at least towards what might be called mature themes or mature storytelling, very much not par for the course. And they were one of the hottest video game companies in the world because they would just come off the release of Final Fantasy VII. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of excitement, and a lot of people expressed a lot of enthusiasm, and people still talk about it fondly to this day, I find.
Yeah.
I just don't know why. It's so sludgy and unpleasant in any number of ways to actually play, and as far as the story is concerned, something mitochondria, something with terrible writing is not exactly what I would consider gripping.
Okay, I don't know if I will put any more time into Parasite Eve. I would like to believe that if I did put more time in, eventually the story would get more interesting, even if the dialogue is probably never going to be any better written than it already is. But that's just being charitable, probably. Nothing that I played made me particularly interested in continuing, because even the combat, like, I did think it was neat that you can move around while you're waiting for your action bar to fill up, but I didn't find that it was easy to be very precise with your movement. The first boss you have to fight kind of like holds out both of her arms and does lasers from both of her arms, and then she turns, and I guess you're supposed to somehow figure out how to stay between the lasers while she's turning, and there's like 3 pixels of give between, like, I don't know. I managed to not get hit by it a handful of times by pure luck, and every other time I just walked right into the beam because I don't understand how you're supposed to do anything else.
Honestly, I think the combat is the most successful part of Parasite Eve. It was one of those things where, again, they were trying something slightly different, while nonetheless grounded in a bunch of JRPG or Final Fantasy adjacent conventions. And it mostly kind of works. It's not great, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, there's a vaguely action-y element, as you say, about running around. It's not particularly well executed. It feels better than your normal exploration movement, that's for sure. That's something, at least. And, when your time is up, you can use parasite powers or fire your gun. And there's this very, very strange and artificial, but nonetheless kind of potentially interesting element of ammo conservation, because you queue up a couple shots in a row, but if you only needed to do the first shot, you still waste the second bullet. So I don't know if they were going for some risk-reward thing there, or if it was just a fluke. It does have, I complained a lot about this in the context of Transistor. It does have a bit of a Transistor problem, though, in that you're running around in real time, and then you queue up your attacks in a sort of, in an asynchronous way. But then the attacks resume real time, and so you might pause in the middle of your attack to reload a clip, and then the enemies start wailing on you because you're stationary at this time. That doesn't feel super great, and I don't know if if this was an intentional dynamic or just a weird accidental artifact of things going on. So it's clumsy, but not nearly as clumsy as everything else.
Yes.
And I don't mean to be too hard on Parasite Eve in particular. Like, I don't know how well a lot of late 90s games age, frankly.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It was a rough transitional period, technologically speaking, and a lot of those games do not age well. However, I have reason to believe that one of its contemporaries, and I have more recent experience with one of its contemporaries, has aged better. But I would go into more details, but that's what we might call a spoiler.
Wonderful.
So that does it for Parasite Eve. Now we're going to take a quick break for some ads, and we are back with a game called Jusant, or as Caitlin would say,
Jusant? I don't know.
We're going to cover this first.
Let's do it.
There is no such thing as, strictly speaking, there's no such thing as a mispronunciation. You and I have different dialects of English.
Sure.
And you and I have different access to French. That's just the way that it is.
Oh, yes.
There's no right way to say it. There's no wrong way to say it. Because let me tell you something. Somebody from the continent, somebody from France, would look at my French-Canadian ass and say, you're not saying it right. You're not speaking proper French. And you know what? They're full of crap. Because Quebec French is a fine version of French. American English is a fine version of English. There's no bad version of English. There's no bad version of French. Get your head out of your ass and accept the fact that people speak the way they speak. There's a whole bunch of cultural factors. And trying to assert that there's a better and worse way to say things only gets you, at best, 2 steps away from something super racist and or classist, all right? So,
it's fair.
When I say that I'm curious to hear how you say the word, I am being sincere because I don't know. I would probably venture in English Jusant, but that I don't think that's... Anyway.
I mean, I'm sensing that I shouldn't pronounce the T, so I'm not pronouncing the T, you know?
You don't have to. It's a whole thing. But... Anyway, in French, the way I would pronounce it, coming from Quebec, being an Anglo-Montrealer from Quebec, my French would say it Jusant. It is a French word that means a receding tide. So Caitlin's going to say it a different way. You can say it however you want.
Yeah,
yes,
true.
The T is silent in the French pronunciation, but you don't have to have the T be silent. That's cool.
Follow your heart.
There you go. This was produced by Don't Nod, a French studio in 2023, and it follows the adventures of an unnamed protagonist whom I call Jesse Jusant, and their companion, who I am told by the Wikipedia page is named Ballast, but in my heart of hearts, Jesse's companion is Blob. And
very good.
More on Blob later. Do you have any experience with other Don't Nod titles, Caitlin?
You know, I believe so, but I forget which ones. Like that time travel-y game.
Life is Strange?
Yeah, that one. I have played Life is Strange, and I played Life is Strange True Colors.
Despite the fact that both Life is Strange and Tell Me Why are very much the kind of games that I would enjoy, I haven't had any experience with them. The first experience I had with Don't Nod was actually their first game, which is Remember Me, which is a super underappreciated PS3 game that I thought was quite good. Not amazing, but quite good. It was a sort of action-adventure brawly thing with surprisingly good combat and traversal elements.
Oh, I didn't realize that was them. That's cool. I remember that. I never played it.
It has a super unfortunate cover, but such is
Yes.
the nature of things. But yeah, Remember Me, I remember quite fondly. They also more recently did Banisher's Ghosts of New Eden, and Don't Nod's history is mostly producing critically successful games that sell about 3 copies. There have been some exceptions. Vampire sold rather well. Life is Strange sold rather well, but a lot of their products have landed them in a particular French procedure, which Don't Nod swears up and down is completely unlike bankruptcy, and which most people familiar with French law say is more or less like bankruptcy. But anyhow, that is a bit of background for Don't Nod. So, Caitlin, why don't you give us a rundown on what one does in Jusant?
All right, so in Jusant, you climb. I was immediately reminded of a game that I shouted out a little while back called Cairn, which is by the developer of Haven.
Ah, yes, and Fury, yes. That weird studio.
So the climbing mechanics. So I understand that technically Jusant has come out first because Cairn is not out yet. But of course, Cairn is the first thing I played. So Cairn and Jusant have some similar climbing mechanics. Cairn, I believe, involved placement of all of your limbs, not just your hands. And then Jusant, you only have to worry about where your hands are going to go. And the character just places their feet wherever they need to. From a storytelling perspective, I'm reminded of Raft, which Raft actually has the opposite problem of Jusant because everything is water instead of nothing is water.
Sure.
And I don't know if the world of Jusant is technically post-apocalyptic or not. Seems like very possible given that there doesn't seem to be any water. I have no idea how any of these people even live without water. Maybe that's... I mean, I guess there's... According to some of the story bits that we find in journals lying around, which is also how Raft does most of its storytelling, I guess there's like a couple different oases, is that how you say plural oasis, around where most people have migrated to. So through all these journals and stuff you find lying around, you learn a little bit about the past, the people who used to live in the areas that you're traversing through. I guess the goal of Jusant is to climb to the top of this mysterious, extremely tall tower. And I think I kind of had the wrong impression going into it, because I had imagined it more as an exploration game. And it certainly does have exploration aspects, but I thought it would be a little bit more freeform. Like you would be able to choose your path more. You really can't. There might be a couple different ways to get somewhere, but that's it. You have those 2 ways that are established. Anytime that I tried to go off the beaten path, I very quickly was directed back to the path. Yeah, so I found it a little frustrating. You have this ability to jump, but the jumping doesn't give you the flexibility that I'd hoped. There's a number of times where I'd be like, oh, that is merely 3 feet below me. I will simply jump off this ledge and down to there. No, you can't do that. You have to place your climbing, like, if you're going down, it's very clunky, I feel like, unless you actually have, like, a large cliff where, of course, you would want to rappel down, or I'm probably not using correct climbing terminology. I'm not sure that you're technically rappelling down when you do it. But, yeah, I don't know. Moving around is not as smooth as I hoped it would be.
It's really quite jarring in a way, and I think some of it is not Jusant's fault, but I agree with you. When you're not climbing, and even sometimes when you're doing climbing adjacent things, it feels extraordinarily awkward.
Yeah.
Walking around corners, walking where edges are involved, very, very awkward. Many instances of jumping, which sometimes you have to do in the context of climbing, very awkward.
Yeah.
The swinging bits, where you have to swing on your rope while you are... Again, we're not using the correct terms, that's fine. Rappelling, and you're expected to then swing and then jump to an adjoining ledge. Those were moments of Jusant that I dreaded, because I knew it was going to feel bad. And sometimes it just wouldn't register properly, and I'd just fall down and have to do it again.
Yep.
Not to my death, thankfully, because you're always attached to some rope or something.
Yeah.
It is very, very difficult to suffer any kind of permanent hardship in Jusant, and that's fine. But... the climbing itself feels cool. I'm kind of okay with it. It's neat. I'm willing to forgive the fact that Jesse's legs, again, Jesse is the protagonist of Jusant, that's just the name I've given them. They're not even animated well. It's not like they're putting onto footholds. They're just doing some sort of generic animation. Whatever, fine. I'm not into climbing. I missed that craze entirely. I had a number of friends that were super into climbing. They brought me climbing a couple times. I hated it, like I hate every form of physical activity. So, unsurprisingly, but there are people who take it very, very seriously, and there are people who love the puzzle-like aspect of the traversal. And again, you're not going to get a whole lot of that in Jusant because it's pretty linear, and it's usually pretty easy to identify the path. That having been said, I would still have some misgivings about the climbing. Even most of the way through the game, I couldn't quite internalize what would be a handhold and what wouldn't be a handhold.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't deceive me as to where to go overall. That was just a function of the specific details about going along the climbing path. Another problem, which is not Jusant's issue, is that, broadly speaking, I don't know if I'm alone. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, Caitlin. I find that any prolonged and extended interaction with trigger buttons on a controller tended to be unpleasant. And in particular, the ones that I'm using, and this especially is not Jusant's problem, I have the narrow triggers rather than more flat paddle style triggers. And those just get uncomfortable after a while because that's almost exclusively what you're doing in Jusant. The right trigger controls your right hand grip, the left trigger controls your left hand grip. So what you're doing is you're literally much of the time, the way you climb in a ladder is you hold up on the directional button and you just alternate right trigger, left trigger, right trigger, left trigger. So after playing Jusant for 45 minutes to an hour, my fingers actually start to hurt.
Yeah.
How do you feel about trigger buttons generally? They're my least favorite buttons, frankly.
Yeah, I don't love them. I thankfully did have the more flat style trigger buttons on my controller, which was nice. But alternating between those two isn't. I don't know. It's not my favorite control scheme, I guess, for doing 90% of the movement in Jusant.
It's tricky. I feel like ever since the first Assassin's Creed, game designers have been struggling about how to do climbing.
Yeah.
And the way it's mostly ended up in contemporary Assassin's Creed games, or even less contemporary games like the Shadow of Mordor games, for example, have basically decided that the way you do climbing is you hold some button and just hold the direction up. And then you engage in some vaguely magical-looking traversal.
Yeah.
Jusant has, to its credit, decided to try to grapple with climbing in a, no pun intended, in a more serious way. And I think, for what it's worth, it is mostly successful. My complaints are mostly quibbles.
Yeah.
And if you're going to make the game almost entirely about climbing up this massive tower, I don't think you could get away with the way other games handle climbing at all.
Yeah, absolutely not.
So what did you think of the narrative elements?
I mean, they were pretty... The narrative elements are pretty light. I don't know. It was fine. That fine is mostly how I feel about Jusant in general. Climbing was genuinely, I did enjoy it. But every time I'm trying to find the next place to get to where I start climbing again, that's annoying because, yeah, I'm probably about halfway through. Sometimes there's very obvious, handholds, and you're like, yes, I need to climb there. But sometimes starting that area isn't particularly clear. For example, there was, this lighthouse that we had to go to. I missed a portion of climbing up it, which, by the way, you have to climb all the way up it in order to get to the story beat, which allows you to continue climbing up the tower. But I missed that. And I was trying to figure out how to get to the path that I could clearly see. Anyway, it's fine. I just wasted 15 minutes trying to get to the next part of the path before I looked it up and realized that I'd actually missed a story beat on the lighthouse thing. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have a lot of strong feelings. It's more that, I was a little disappointed that there weren't more options of being able to climb up. And I mean, the weird little ballast creature. I did like some of the mechanics that you could use with it, where, you could tell it to do a little song and it would make vines grow, or these weird succulent type things kind of bloom so that you could get to new areas. I thought that was kind of neat. I don't really know what's going on with the story. I don't know what the significance is of this creature that I have with me.
You seem strangely indifferent to Blob.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, he's cute.
Wow. Blob is adorable.
Yeah. And there's a nice little like segment where, it gave me a hug and I just thought that was really sweet and I was into it. Mostly I think it's some of my disappointment with the other bits that have dampened my enthusiasm for Blob.
It's funny that you mentioned the lighthouse. I think that's very telling because for a very, very short game, Jusant takes a little bit of time to get going because before the lighthouse, you don't really have many tricks. In point of fact, you haven't even met Blob.
Yeah.
Blob shows up after the lighthouse, and it's only after the lighthouse where some of the climbing starts, I think, to get a little bit cooler, where it's like, okay, what I have to do is I have to climb over here, and then I have to drop down, and then I have to swing on the rope, and then I have to trigger Blob, and Blob is going to wake up the succulent, and then I have to jump, grab the succulent, get on my way, and stuff like that. And those gameplay elements are pretty neat. I have to say, overall, I share your overall impression of Jusant being fine, but before the lighthouse, I was really wondering what the entire point of Jusant was. Like, I wasn't getting anything out of it.
Yeah.
And I mention the story beats because the world of Jusant could have led to so much better artifacts being left behind than what we get. We get basically a series of letters and newspaper articles that are extraordinarily mundane and not particularly well executed and not evocative of much of anything.
Yeah.
And this is despite the fact that this is an environment that is, as you say, more or less post-apocalyptic, where survival must have been very hard, and where most people left. But there's some mention about how some people want to leave and other people don't. And so effectively, like this is like classic stories of cultural decline that you're treading with. It doesn't take a whole lot to really make some of those documents evocative. The stories of the people who leave, their misgivings about leaving, despite the fact that they have attachments here. And so, like, they try to do that a little bit, but it's just also bland and underwritten that I really find it hard to get motivated about any of this universe.
Yeah.
And the graphic design isn't really helping all that much either, because I feel like less is more would have really helped them. Like, the environment is just clogged with detritus and barnacles and abandoned furniture and abandoned books and a half-broken table and a weird boat and an oar's over there and 3 lanterns are over there. It's really crowded.
Yeah.
And consequently, the overall visual effect is just bland. Like, it's just, there's so much going on that they don't really have an opportunity to have like a set piece of, oh, this used to be, I don't know, this used to be a particular room in someone's house that you're going through that has been long abandoned. It's just, all this visual noise detracts from it.
Yeah, it's visual noise and it's all the same, at least in that, general first couple areas. It's all the same visual noise. It's like, it's all the same remnants of boats or, just random garbage. And you can't look at hardly any of it unless it's a letter or shell. Every now and then you can pick up a shell and listen to the ocean. Which also, it's like that forces you to look at little parts of the environment. And it takes like, I don't know, maybe 20 seconds to just cycle through before you're allowed to stop listening to the ocean.
Yeah, again, for a relatively short game, Jusant takes a while to get going, and there's not a whole lot of variety even after that. I've seen in copy and in some discussions elsewhere about how you each chapter you progress through a different biome with different sights and challenges. I'm like, no, it's mostly the same. Visually, overall, the design of the world is kind of okay when you abstract away from the incredible noise.
Yeah.
But granted, I talk about this game all the time. I couldn't help but contrast Jusant unfavorably to Ico. Ico's environments, the way they used the camera, the way they used the staging, the way they designed the levels, gave you a sense of scale, gave you a sense of consequence, connoted a sort of dying world and a sort of quiet, serene desperation that associates that. Jusant could have done that even more so, because it's literally just one huge cyclopean tower that you're going up. But just restrictive cameras and poor level choices and poor graphic design choices really undercut some of that good stuff.
Yeah.
Like, Jusant had tremendous potential, but other than some cute climbing bits and the fact that Blob is one of the best companions we ever have. Because, I mean, look, say what you want about Blob. Blob doesn't talk your ear off like Navi does.
True.
Or like Isan does.
Yeah.
Creature of few words, that Blob. Much appreciated.
Few words, very helpful.
So I agree with you. Jusant was okay. It was aight.
Yeah. Generally, like, big picture, I thought Jusant was, rather lovely. I liked the general art style. I do think, like we already said, some of the areas are a little too cluttered. There's nothing particularly interesting about a lot of the individual areas, and at least so far for me, it's all somewhat samey. But I enjoy the climbing. I enjoy the traversal, except the swing and jump bits. Those are just annoying.
So a promising mechanical element in some of the climbing design, but unfortunately the rest of Jusant doesn't really quite come together, which is rather unfortunate. I still like the studio, though. I'm curious. I should really go back and try Life is Strange.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to for 10 years.
Yeah, you should do it. I played it a while back now, so I don't remember anything anymore, but I did enjoy it.
All right, so that's Jusant by Don't Nod, or as Caitlin would call it,
Jusant.
So now we're going to go on to some shameless hyping of upcoming titles, what we're looking forward to. Caitlin, what are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to a game called Artis Impact. It is a indie turn-based RPG. It's got really cute pixel art, a great sense of style. I was immediately intrigued when I was watching the trailer, just because I think that the developer did some really interesting stuff with how they'll highlight certain areas in a scene or kind of zoom in on something. And they show like these little bits of dialogue. Like, I don't know, it has somewhat of like a comic book thing going on with different panels popping up over the screen. It's supposed to release August 7th, and there's a demo on Steam. I didn't get to finish the demo. I only played it for a little bit. In fact, about 20 minutes before Mark and I started talking just now. But it seems pretty cute and fun, and I'm looking forward to it and to see how it goes.
I have watched the first 40 seconds of the Artis trailer.
Yeah.
And during this 40 seconds, they have used about 3 or 4 radically different art styles in conjunction very well.
Yeah.
You're right. There's a sort of comic influence. There's a strong watercolor vibe in terms of the tone and colors that are used. There's some strong pencil sketches. There's weird pseudo dioramas with elaborately animated 2D sprites. There is so much going on visually, and it all works, which is a minor miracle.
Yeah.
If you had described this, I would have thought it would sound like a chaotic mess, but it is beautiful.
It looks very cool. I'm very interested in seeing what it ends up being like.
I should try this demo. That looks great.
Yeah.
Artis Impact by Moss. One hopes that they will do Moss.
Oh boy.
Yeah, sorry. That's all I got. Anyway, I am looking forward to Terminator 2D No Fate. This is by Bitmap Bureau. They do a bunch of two-dimensional games. They still design for the Neo Geo. They do designs for Genesis. They designed a run-and-gun top-down shooter called Xenocrisis for Genesis, Steam, and Neo Geo that was great. And so I'm very much looking forward to Terminator 2D. As you would expect, this is a licensed game about Terminator 2, which is as good as you remember it, or better. And it has a whole bunch of set pieces from the movie, and apparently it's going to be mixing gameplay styles. That part I'm a little less keen on. That's awfully hard to do when it's done well. I think it's great, but they might be biting off more than they can chew, but it's going to be coming out soon, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what they do with it. That is Terminator 2D No Fate.
I never would have expected a Terminator game coming out today to have this pixel art look, but it looks super cool. I'm
I know,
into
doesn't
this.
it?
Yeah.
So on that note of enthusiasm, we're going to call it for this episode of All My Best Friends Are Digital. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're interested in supporting free and independent media, you can find us on patreon.com/amfad, where you can support our work or not. That's cool too. Listening is an excellent form of support, and we value the time you've spent with us today. You can also check us out on YouTube, where we have gameplay footage over our yammerings of that, and you can see how bad we really are at video games. We are not good at all.
No.
Take care of yourselves. Hope you play something good, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye. See you.
Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to get in touch, you can reach us at allmybestfriendsaredigital@gmail.com. Hope to see you again soon.